So what happens when a 70s kid decides to write books about his favorite toys? Want to find out? Well, let's kick in the door. Welcome back to Ink and Ammo, Books with a Body Count, where we explore action and adventure, and this is a no PC zone. So once upon a time, G.I. Joe allowed an open license for people to write about the characters. So Jim Beard decided he was going to write some stories around his favorite toys, the old school 12-inch 1970s version of G.I. Joe. Eventually, they pulled this license, and the stories that Jim had wrote, he converted into his own invention, his own adventure team stories, and created DC Jones Adventure Command International. DC stands for Damage Control. So Jim took the two stories he had wrote under the G.I. Joe open license and put them in this book and created a third story specifically for this book. As I said, there's three stories in here, one main story and two shorter ones. The main story is Mystery of the Sunken Tomb. It has very cool little diagrams that harken back to the old school toys as well at the beginning of each story. And these stories all take place in 1973. And they are a progression of stories, so they go further and further along in the timeline as you read each story. And the first story begins with one of the adventure commandos searching for a missing missile. Instead of finding the missile, though, he finds a sunken Egyptian tomb in a place it should not be, off the coast of California. And then we get a set of scenes where he begins calling in all the other members of the adventure team as they are in the midst of their own adventure. It's actually pretty cool and would remind you of like this cartoon scene where the gathering of heroes, where the leader calls everybody together while they're all on their own missions. That was pretty fun. And there are some pretty fun shark battle scenes in here in the first story. And we follow the story as the team gathers off the coast of California and sets up their base. And we quickly find out there's something else going on in the local town that's not quite right. Something's off with the population of the local town. And we follow Adventure Command as they investigate this sunken Egyptian tomb as a storm is approaching, a very powerful hurricane. The story for me was mostly fun. The problems I had with it, though, were I think Jim was hedging on these. He was walking the razor's edge. He didn't want to go too much into the silliness that he could have because he was basing this on toys. And he didn't want to go too serious and lose the joy of what he was creating. And for me, that took a little away from it. I almost wish he had gone a little more into the silly, leaned a little bit more into the over the top. And I had trouble keeping track to some of the characters. And I was reading this first story. I was kind of getting a little worried about where this was going. He had dropped the missile story completely, and we never really got back to it. And I read through, and it was fairly enjoyable. But it just didn't hit the marks I wanted it to for the first story. But I moved on to the second story, Jaws of the Dragon. And this takes place in October of 1973, so just a couple months after the first story. And this involves their plane going down in a jungle. And they're lost, don't know where they are. And they are being tracked by pirates, not like old school yo-ho-ho pirates, but more of a modern incarnation of pirates who are looking to steal Adventure Team's equipment. And that's when something started to click for me. The second story, he seemed to be having a little more fun with it. And I was making the connection between how much as a kid when we played with these toys, and I did play with these G.I. Joes. I had them and loved them. That was my favorite toy along with the little green soldiers. I was making the connection of how these pirates wanted the equipment the Adventure Command had. And how I equated that to when you were a kid and wanted the toys that went along with the Joes. They were a little more expensive and you had to talk your parents into it, and that desire to get a hold of all the equipment for these Joes. He wrote it in a way that after a minute I started making that connection in my head. Not only that, but the story was a little more fun. It was a little more what I wanted. It was a little more action, a little more just joyous. like he was reveling in writing the story now. Now we are getting where I wanted to go. And it only involved a couple of the characters who had been on the island, not the whole team like in the first story. And it was easier to keep track of who was what. And I really kind of got a kick out of that story. And now I was intrigued. And I went into the third story. The third story he had wrote original for this book. The first two were for the open license with G.I. Joe and had printed them online. Now he was writing, I think, he was putting himself into these stories and putting it all in there. Writing for the joy of his love of these characters. And when I got to the third story, that started to show more. And the third story is short. The third story is Dangerous Recovery. And it is short, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Now I was hitting the stride I wanted him to hit. This was what reminded me of being a kid and playing with these toys, these over-the-top adventures. He included a new character, Dixie, that was fun and started to give you that identity of the old school toys where everybody had an over-the-top personality that was recognizable. And by the end of this, I was into it. I had found the joy I wanted by the end of that story and wanted more. I wanted the next book. And sadly, I don't have it. And hopefully I'll be able to get to it. Hopefully I'll be able to acquire it and report back to you about how it went in the second book. And if I had it, I would have immediately started reading it. Because by the time I was done with the third story, I got it. I was into it. Jim got it. He knew what he was supposed to be writing. He knew what he wanted to do. And he wasn't holding back anymore. It was fun. I was really enjoying myself by the time that third story ended, and I wanted more, and I didn't have it, and that made me very sad. But I did go on and read this little side book. The back is pretty funny, too. And I had picked this up at Pulp Fest, and he signed it for me. And he's a very nice guy, by the way. And this book is not part of the story. This is kind of a side fun stuff where almost all the stories are written before their first book in 1972. As the Adventure Command team is, starting its run, a newscaster is talking about the characters and reporting and doing a newscast for each of them, telling you what's happening and doing interviews like you'd see in the news. And they weren't great in and of itself. They were just a little fun aside, but they helped flesh out the characters in the world, and you started to really again see the joy of playing with these toys would have been. Of the over the top, but not too far, fun. It worked as a little aside, just a world build. And the last story actually takes place in 1974, and it's not a newscast. It's done as a pre-Kids on Bike story. A bunch of kids who are obsessed with Adventure Command go on a little venture of their own, and it links in with Adventure Command, and it was fun. It was cute. The book's only like $5, and it's not necessary. It's not story. It's just world building and a little extra goofy fun. But for $5, if you can get it for that, yeah, definitely worth just checking out. So one of the other fun things about it is I started noticing as he was having more fun, he was adding more Easter eggs in. Little things that if you were a kid that grew up in the 70s, or somebody who knows the 70s and are a fan, if you were playing with these toys and watching TV shows like The $6 Million Man, not only would you get some of these, some of them are pretty deep, but you'd appreciate them. But if in fact you are one of those kids who grew up in the 70s, had the original G.I. Joe, were watching $6 Million Man and into the action adventure shows and culture of that time, you're going to have a good time with this. And I think you're going to have a better time as the books progress. I was getting the feeling that he was really finding his stride and finding joy in writing this. And like I said, I really want the second one, especially since it seems to be an Arctic adventure, which is right up my alley. And I'm going to suggest right off, you pick these up if that's in your wheelhouse. If that's your bag, if you were a 70s kid who played with G.I. Joe and you don't mind a little goofy fun, if you don't take your action too seriously, then don't just pick up one, but pick up volume 2 too, because you're going to want to go on and read the next one after you finish the third story. it was a lot of fun. And after the last Ink and Ammo I did, which was all about the Eastern Front, kind of dark and sad and melancholy, I thought something like this is a nice lift from that episode. Now, I want to talk about my rating system because I've never actually explained it before. So, 1 means burn it. 2 means skip it. Anything 3 and above, I'm suggesting. 3 is above average. So if it's a 3, it's good. 4 means great. Buy it now. No, don't even think twice. Run away. Go to the store. Don't even wait for the end of the video. Well, no, wait for the end of the video. I'm kidding. And 5 is legendary. That's Die Hard, John Wick, first Matrix level.
Still no kung fu.
So if anything over a 3 is, I suggest you read it. Now, as I was telling you, the first story I was a little iffy on, but by the end of the book, I loved it. So I'm going to put this at a 3.5, right between Sustained Fire and Bulletstorm, with the caveat that I think that this has nothing but a positive upside. So I'm telling you, if that's up your alley, go check it out. Right, as a bonus, I wanted to talk about a Men's Adventure Reader. This is put together by the same people who do Men's Adventure Quarterly and the Men's Adventure Library. It is number 1 in the series, but there's only one. And what this is an opportunity. If you're interested in the Men's Adventure pulp stories, but are not sure if you're on the fence about it or don't want to spend the money on like the full Men's Adventure Quarterly or one of the full books, this is a good alternative. It's only $10, and in it you get 10 different stories. And these stories in this one, well, not only are they not in any of the other books, so they're unique to this, but they do run a little adult, a little mature. They're not graphic. They don't have to, these writers were good enough, they didn't have to resort to being smutty and graphic to grab your attention. And that's one of the best things about them is their writing skill with such a short piece of work is just fantastic. It's fun to read. So anyway, if you're on the fence about picking up like a Men's Adventure Quarterly because you don't want to spend the full amount and you don't know if you're going to enjoy pulps, or you don't want to pick up one of the full books from the Men's Adventure Library, this is a quick, easy way to do it. There's only one, so you don't have to worry about collecting them. It has 10 stories, and not only does it have the stories, but it also includes the art, and it is in black and white. It also includes the cartoons, the original cartoons from different Men's Adventure magazines. It has the ads, but this is part of what makes it fun. And of course, because I know you're going to ask, yes, it does have the model layouts. Of course. And they're fun. They're in black and white, but they're fun to have. And like I said, there's 10 different stories in here, just to show you the models. And there's 10 different stories in here. Like I said, sorry for repeating myself. And I'll tell you what they are. There's The Cannibal Bride of Chief Petty Officer Maury, Beauties for the Nazi Artist of Agony, Hitler's Baboon Tortures in Mabuti, Up to My Neck in Live Lobsters, Love in a Suitcase, Confessions of a Convention Queen. You can read between the lines on that one, right? The Tattoo Gang's Vicious Fire Torture of the Society Debs, Love Me to Death, The Incredible Revenge of Colorado Katie. That was a trip. My Wild Escape from Mafia's Orgy Island Paradise. That read like an early executioner type story. Death Watch of the 2nd Platoon. And probably my favorite, The Last Ride of the Rebel Joy Girl Cavalry. That felt almost a little bit like a female sword and sorcery story. I mean, it wasn't that time period, but they got that vibe, and it was a lot of fun. But if you're looking to try the pulp stories and you don't want to commit to an expensive book and just want to try it, there's only one of these out, and hopefully enough people will buy this they'll continue it, because I really enjoyed it. And for $10, 10 stories plus all the extras, you really can't beat it. It's great stuff. Like I said, it's put together by the same people who put together the Men's Adventure Quarterly and part of the staff of Men's Adventure Library. So check it out. Anyway, thank you for joining me for another episode of Ink and Ammo. I really hope you come back. These are fun to do. It's one of the things I want to do for my channel is put out there books that will inspire men and women who don't like the romantasy genre to read some crazy, fun, over-the-top action books. And hopefully it will. Hopefully it'll work. Hopefully it'll inspire you a little bit. But anyway, thank you for coming. Please tell me what you think about that. Tell me how you feel. Tell me if you had a G.I. Joe or the old school ones. Love to hear it because I loved mine. Like, subscribe for me, would you? Comment, and thank you to all the new people who have joined the channel in the last week. I mean, wow. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Thank you. And I hope you'll all stay and come back for more content. Anyway, remember the secret to Zen: read books, pet dogs, and listen to metal. Thank you so much.
I just sold the guy's G.I. Joe for $1,000.